Hey, Todd Brown here. So, what is the single most valuable business lesson that I learned in 2023? Like, whether marketing, operations, leadership, time management, what's the number one most valuable lesson that I took away from 2023? Well, that was a question that I recently posed to my top one mastermind members recently in Puerto Rico. I wanted them, and I prepared them for this. I told them that I was going to ask them this question, and I wanted them to answer it, each of them in front of everybody else, so that everybody else could gain perspective, new insights from their answer. And we went around the room one at a time. And finally, I got to share my number one takeaway, my most valuable lesson from 2023. And I want to share that with you now. Now, let me say this up front before I give you the answer. It's actually painful for me to voice this, for me to share this with you. But nevertheless, this was the lesson that I learned. And here it is, that when it comes to business, the boat you're in and the river you are on is much more important when it comes to your success than is the quality of your marketing skills. Now, let me unpack this for you and explain exactly what it is that I mean and why I came to this lesson, or how I came to this lesson. So the river really represents the marketplace that you're in. And the boat on that river represents the model of your business, your business model, your marketing model, your monetization model, your acquisition model, all of those things wrapped up into one being called your business model. So we've got the marketplace that you're in, and we've got the model of your business. Here is the reality. Here is the thing to understand, that in certain markets, in many markets, one of the things that you'll find is you'll find far less competition. And with far less competition, you'll find far less exposure to direct response marketing. And with far less exposure, meaning to prospects in that marketplace, with far less exposure to direct response marketing, you find much higher response rates. You find people that respond, or the market responds better. You see higher click-through rates on direct response ads. You see higher opt-in rates on lead pages or opt-in pages or registration pages. You see higher response rates with offers, with long-form sales letters, with VSLs, with webinars, right? The less webinars people are exposed to, the better they tend to respond to those things. But that's just the beginning, because you also find much lower traffic costs or media buying costs in those markets that aren't nearly as crowded or saturated as others. And so with lower media costs, it ultimately means that you have lower customer acquisition costs, right? That you pay less for a visitor, you pay less for a lead, you pay less for a sale, which makes it that much easier from a marketing perspective, because you need much lower AOVs, or average order values, to make those, to make the economics work. As well, in those markets, because there's lower media costs, therefore lower acquisition costs, because they're exposed to less direct response marketing, you tend to see higher response rates. What you also find is that you don't need A-level copy chops or A-level copy to make marketing campaigns work. You can often get away with much lower conversion rates in those markets that are far less competitive and far less saturated than you need in much more crowded and much more saturated markets. And so realize that choosing the right market will ultimately, or choosing the right river will ultimately determine how easy it is for you to flow down the river, the obstacles in the river, the challenges in the river, how hard you have to row in the river. And so it's important for you to really understand, for you to get the fact that, right, there's no reward for having to work harder to produce the same result. In other words, if you were given the option of, should I work harder? Should I work really, really hard to make, an extra $1 million in the next 12 months? Or would I rather earn an extra $1 million in the next 12 months working much less and doing it the easy way? Well, there's no reward for doing it the hard way, right? Like, I think that we could agree that you and I would both choose the easy way. Well, often when you're competing in these crowded, saturated markets, it's extremely difficult or much more difficult than other markets, right? You have to bring A-level copy chops. You're going to pay a lot more. Your conversion rates are going to be lower. You're going to have a higher customer acquisition cost. Therefore, you have to have higher AOVs. You have to have a greater back end in order to subsidize the cost of acquisition and make the economics work. In other words, right, it becomes infinitely harder in those more competitive and saturated spaces. And so, right, every time my partner and I, my business partner and I, Damien, have partnered with another business, have taken equity in these businesses, first and foremost, all of our portfolio businesses are outside the online marketing business building space. And every time it blows me away, it absolutely blows me away how much easier it is in those spaces to put up an extra $1 million in 12 months, like to hit an extra $1 million or $2 million or $3 million or the growth rate of those businesses. It blows me away that the level of copy can be far lower in those spaces and still work. It blows me away at how we don't need monster big ideas in order to stand out in those spaces because they're far less competitive and far less saturated. It blows me away at the difference in media costs in those markets and how much lower they are and what it's costing us to generate a visitor and a lead and how much higher our opt-in rate or lead generation rate is over there. And so I would say to you, what pains me about this is that right, the reality is that what's much more important than or much more impactful than your marketing chops is that you're playing in a river where it's easier to win, right? It's easier to win. It's easier to put up those numbers. It's easier to generate traffic. It's easier to monetize your buyers and your leads and so on. And so, right, that's all about the river and the model. I'm going to save for another video. But the thing that I really want you to take away here is that, right, choosing the wrong river to boat in will make things infinitely more difficult for you, or can make things infinitely more difficult for you than is choosing the right river where you can reach your destination smoother, easier, less work, less hassles, less competition, less noise, less distractions, all of that. And I've just seen it play out over and over and over in our portfolio companies. And so think about it. Are you using your skills in a river that's filled with rocks and boulders and is slow moving and requires you to row like a madman or madwoman? Or are you in a river that allows you to shine and excel without working nearly as hard? And if you're in the slow-moving, boulder-filled, river, then is there another river that you can move to that would allow you to use the same skill sets that you have right now, but shine and grow like a weed? And so think about it. That's what I shared with my top One Mastermind members. And I hope that you take that to heart and ponder it. And so I'll talk to you soon in the next video.